Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Mussel Up training video. Today, I'm going to show you how to set up Mussel Up full version from scratch. In most of the cases, a friendly team will reach out to you and help you setting up just because a lot of information are very technical, such as anchor locations. And it's easier for us to do one single import and also run through our steps of what we're supposed to set up for you. However, in some cases, maybe you're too far, maybe you're just trialing the version, maybe you just wanted to see how everything works and you don't want to be fully onboarded. So I'll show you how in a few minutes set up Mussel Up to your best condition in order to maximize the use of our app. This is a demo environment, and obviously we have some information in here, but let's imagine that you just logged in, you won't see anything in here. So you would go just to farms and click add the farm. Now we would like to add a new farm and say it's a test farm. A test farm has identification number 434235. This number is quite important, whether it's your lease number or identification of your farm that the government gave you. It's quite important because it appears in many places in the app, and a lot of teams around the farm uses farm identification to communicate rather than farm name. It's just easier this way. Now, the second important thing for adding the farm is your farm location. Why is it important? Having GPS coordinations of the farm allows us to do a couple of things. Firstly, we can track the biosecurity when you travel around between farms. If we know that you entered the farm, if there is a history of some biosecurity issues on one farm, we know that you traveled between farms. Most likely you carried something with you between farms. The second thing is a validation. If the boat creates an assessment, let's say that create an assessment, and they say they accidentally selected the wrong farm, they say they just did an assessment, line 1A, they press OK, what's going to happen is the system is going to calculate the distance between them and the real farm, and it's going to say, hey, you're about 10 kilometers from the farm that you're inserting the data for. Are you sure you're in the right place? Or are you sure you're inserting the right information? And that will allow the user, give them ability to correct the information. So let's say that we're in Coromandel in New Zealand. Let's create a farm. We have 4 corners, or we have multiple corners. We can have as many corners as we want. But we use latitude and longitude because it's the most commonly used navigation data. However, we also have an importer for New Zealand GIS data to import and other information. So if you have your farm and most importantly your anchor details, please reach out. A friendly team will allow you to, will import it for you very quickly from Excel format. So, but in the meantime, we're just going to do 1, 3, 4 corners, 4 corners, roughly a square. This is a farm. A farm has roughly 15 hectares, and the owner is Mussel Company. The owner is important because we produce harvest declaration form, digitized harvest declaration form, which is a food safety document. We use that information to say who is the owner of the crop. So let's say that we have 100%. We can obviously split it, and as it happens in many cases, we can do 2 companies that are 50% of ownership. And that will help us also tracking that information. But let's say that we currently owning 100% of the farm. Let's create a farm. that farm just appears in here, and it's obviously empty. There's nothing in there. So let's click the farm. A couple of things that in here you can already see is that Mussel company is an owner. It has 15 hectares, and it's 4235 ID, which I already mentioned, but it has no lines. So let's add the line. We have one line, we can call it 1A. The length, the backbone, the length, we don't have to put the length. If it's already seeded, and it's in your case, it probably will be seeded. So let's say that it already has 3,400 meters. The backbone is 150 meters. We don't group it, and we want to put it on our on the farm, which is somewhere here. Now, obviously, this is not going to be super easy because we don't really see that farm. But as I mentioned, in most cases, very rarely we do it manually. We import all of the information from the Excel, and it allows us to quickly import entire farm. But for this purpose, we're just testing. We created one line, 1A, and that line just appears in here. So that line will allow us to start collecting information. Because it's empty, we need to say what's on that line. So we can seed the line, or we can catch the spot. The difference between catching spot and seeding the line is that the catching spot does not require a source of your spot. It means that you're just hanging the line and you're catching the wild spot from the water. Whereas the seeding a line, you need to have a source of that spot. So in this case, I'm not going to show you how the seeding works. It's another video. Feel free to have a look at the seeding video. But we already have a spot in here. So we're just going to select the 75 kgs of our spot. We're going to call it season 2024. And we're just going to fill up some information, basic information, which is line was 300, 400. A drop is 2 meters. Spot size is, say, 30 millimeters the last time we've seen it. We can put another information in here. We can select the inventory as well, but let's just say this is basic information. Now, this is the base of Mussel App. The base of Mussel App is the storage of your species. And in this case, this is a line. All of that information is maintained in here. It's been seeded here. I haven't created a plant's harvest date, so it just remembers the same date. It doesn't have enough information because it's a brand new line to calculate the future harvest date. We know that the last time we've seen it was 30 mils, and we have the line seeded. What's going to happen now if I go to farms and I go to my test farm? My farm is has the one line A, and I have a list of the lines. So now that we have a line, we can keep adding the lines. We can import them as well, and we do recommend you import them. It's a lot of work to do with one line, one by one. As you saw, creating all of the GPS locations, it's much easier and much quicker to import it from Excel in one go, especially if you have information about all of the lines in one Excel. As we've seen in the history, a lot of farmers maintain that information. Send it to us, and we'll be able to import it very quickly. So, why did we put the GPS location? If you click that little button here, which is the green button in here, it will give you a visual, visual representation of your farm. We only have one line. The mussels are growing. Don't need any assessment, nothing to do. But if you go to, this is a line that we didn't put in the right place. But if we go to a real farm, that's how it looks like. And this is the demo data, but the data is imported from a real farm. You can see visually, you can see 1A to 15A. They all in here, color coded. You can see on the right hand side what each color means. And that's why it's important to set them up visually. Now that we have a line and we have what's on the line, let's set some settings. So if you click on your little face, let's start with users. We have currently just one user, and this is the user we registered with. The role is owner. We can't change it. There's always one owner of the application. So when we want to create a new user, we're going to call it test and Mussel app. We can give them an admin rights, but in most cases, it will be either user or processing plant. Here's what the difference is. A user would be pretty much everybody in your company that you want to have limited rights. You want to give them limited rights. So in this case, we want that user to manage absolutely everything on all of our farms. And we can send an invitation. They will get an email notification and they can register. We can also hide some elements. Hiding financials means that the budget element from the website will disappear for them. And we can also specifically tell them, we don't want you to see test farm because you don't own it. We're managing multiple companies. We just want to make sure that you see only information that are belonging to you. Processing plant is a very simple user that allows you to scan QR code on the bag when you harvest and process it on the processing plant. All it does, that user, is allows you to see the list of the farms, plus allows you to confirm that your crop arrived to the processing plant and it has been processed. In many cases, this allows us to show the statistics, which is we don't have any statistics in the year. This is exactly what you're going to see as a new account. We're going to show you how many bags you have in the storage, how many bags are currently processing, and how many bags processed today. This is only if you're processing that user is useful. And once you have those users, so invite those users, they're going to appear on pending invited users list until they confirm the account. Once you have the users, you want to create your boats. Now, we don't have a boat, so let's create one. We have a boat. So we have a boat. We put a registration, AK123, and I'm going to say confirm. Why boat? The boats are important because we don't track the user performance based on the user, but based on the boat. And this is because it's not important for us to know how Johnny or Bobby on the boat perform, but how they perform as a crew. Therefore, we can select multiple crew members on that boat, and those crew members can also move themselves between boats from the mobile app. This is also important to understand that once you assign to the boat, if there's any tasks created for you for that boat, you're going to get a notification because you are a crew member of that boat. So you're going to get notifications every time that boat gets tasks assigned. Now that you have users and boats, let's do the last things, which is the last couple of things, which is, let's say, tags. Tags are important element of managing your farm. This, again, in here is a very easy way of color coding an understanding of which lines are empty, which lines are ready to harvest, and those are by default selected to understand. The system understands them by default. But imagine that you, for instance, want to know which lines are broken. You want to tag lines that are not here. So, sorry, you want to create a tag that is not here. So let's go to the tag and let's go custom tag. I'm going to say broken line. And at the moment, if you go to the mobile app, you will see a new ability to tag a line as broken. So you can see that this one currently is broken line. It has a tag. This will allow you to filter later on lines that are broken. And the tags are important to communicate, again, a custom operations between you and boat crews to understand what information are important for that particular line. Similarly, we have custom fields. So in this case, we have assessment fields and custom seeding fields. By default, we have multiple fields that are assigned for per species. This is a mussel farm. So we have a default color, and you can edit them. The default drop-down and say this is the beginning, so you don't actually have options. So color is probably not a good example because it's used on very specific conditions. But let's say that condition score, we're going to customize our condition score. So our condition score is not an input, but it's a drop down. We want to say condition score is perfect, good, average, and bad. So, and data type tells you what information the system will take. So we want a number, we're going to confirm it. Now what's going to happen is that condition score from now on an assessment will have a drop down. So let's go to the test farm on line number 1A and create an assessment. And now we have condition score and we have our custom fields. Allows us to communicate better between companies. And lastly, to start, you can set up some settings. Now, obviously, this is your profile. You can just say your company, change your password, and go to the settings. Now, settings, here's a few elements of what you can change in settings. Harvest type list is what sort of crop you're taking as a mussel farmer. As a mussel farmer, you can sell whole mussels, half shell, meat, oil products, powder products, but you can also create a custom ability. This, again, it helps customizing your harvest declaration form. And rather than putting information and asking skipper what sort of mussel it is on the line, what sort of quality, is it only meat? Is it bad quality? Or is it a very good quality and it should be half shell? Or it should be oil product because it's very fat? This allows them to save the time, and rather than typing, they can just select the selection. Line assessment expire is by default 90 days. This is how often our system will remind you about the assessment. By default, it's 90 days. Every 3 months, roughly, you will get a notification that you need an assessment. And this will make sure that you don't lose any important information about your crop. How many stages you're farming from, the system long-term will detect it. But if you say that you do 2 or 3 or 4 stages, we haven't seen anybody doing 4 stages, but we have that option. This allows us to help the algorithm speed up learning. This was, if you insert that information and you say that you harvest on 20 and 40 mils, actually 50 mils, and roughly this will, both of them take 6 months. The system in many cases before it will learn, it will suggest, for instance, in here, when you do the seeding and your mussels are, let's say, 15 mils, it will automatically say, well, your estimated harvest is going to be plus 6 months from today. So that will help you reduce manual entries. These fields over time are going to improve with the more information that the system will have. The more information the system will predict for you. GPS warning. This is in the app. As I mentioned, when you set up the GPS location, you can turn that off. You can say, do not show that GPS warning. Some skippers get frustrated because they always insert information leaving the farm, and they always have that notification that you're too far from the farm. You can turn that off. Track original spat. This is a very specific setting, and it only works if you have a lot of spat, and it usually works for the researchers. It was created for research teams, in fact, and it works if you know exactly how many and in which spots your spat is seeded. So if you have one line and you have 20 spats in there, and you know exactly where they are, you can track their location and over time. Email preferences, you can unsubscribe from any notifications. Task settings, there's a default tasks that you can just pre-select, just so it speeds up reporting for your team. Those are default ones. When you open the app, you can select a new task, and then you can just say that you're doing something specifically. Other than obviously the farm elements, which are assessments, harvests. You can also do custom tasks and add them in here. Processing works only for if you have processing plants. This is the type of elements that would come to your processing plant. By default, we have mussels, obviously, and then we have brokens, so broken shell, small, so too small to process, biofouling, anything green waste, so you can keep adding the elements. Again, all of it is to speed up the inserting data by skippers, so they don't have to insert any information. And lastly, we have static fields. Those are the fields that, again, most importantly on harvest declaration form, you would always insert, and it just helps you to create them so they don't have to type them every time. So imagine that harvest declaration form has a port of unload, and as your port of unload would be always havlock. If you insert it in here, by default, your harvest declaration form will always have havlock as a port of unload, and this speeds up hugely delivered options, packhouse options. This hugely speeds up data inserting, and allows your skippers to insert the information only in 2 or 3 fields. The rest is pre-filled for them. Lastly, biosecurity options. We allowed people to report any biosecurity. So you can just say, we see a starfish and, I don't know, seaweed. Again, allows you to modify the static fields that are harvest declaration form and report. Sorry, this one is a biosecurity. So this is a separate report. You can report biosecurity elements, and they will populate in the biosecurity report. So in a nutshell, that is what the beginning of setup is. And the last thing that needs to be explained is the validation. Every user you're going to create has this field, which is called data validation required. We encourage you to have absolutely everyone, including yourself, this field ticked. What it does is we have a skipper app, which is a mobile application. The mobile application allows you to work offline, and it's very limited information, so it's not overwhelming for skippers. Allows them to very clearly find out what's on the farm, what's on the line, and just insert information without too much drama. Now, if they insert information there are situations when the information are inserted incorrectly, wrong place, or anything that happens needs to be corrected by staff. So every time that the user with that tick box ticked, which is data validation required, enters the information, that information will appear on validation tab. And I'm going to show you just right now on the live site. We have another test account on the live site. So in here, we have a couple of information inserted in the past, and we can view it. So we can say, okay, well, on the line 2A, they did an assessment, the size minimum was 60, the size maximum was 70, the assessment date, planned harvest date, all that information. We can scroll up, we can view the photo, what they taken. Okay, they took a photo of the laptop. We have a comment. Now we can either confirm it or we can correct any information. Okay, well, they said that they gave me a call and they said it's ready to harvest. Well, maybe I should mark it as ready to harvest because they've forgotten. So I just click that and I'll confirm it. And when I do, that information from here disappears. What it allows you is that we can validate the information, but we also maintain the history and integrity of the data. We also have the view entry location, so we can tell you where they were. And this is Wellington, this is my location. So this is what it tells you where they were. So for instance, when you say that they were on the farm 8812, land 10A, you can just click on it and say, were they actually on that farm? And you can see where that information was collected. So if the information is wrong and you're kind of like, oh, was it 8812 or was it 8456? The best way to do that is just to see, well, where were they when they were inserting the information, and you can just find the neighboring farm. So data validation is very, very important to understand in terms of the how the system works and how to set up the users. As I said, I recommend everybody to be validated, at least at the beginning, to maintain the data integrity and better performance of the app in the future. That, in general, should keep you going with the app. There's a lot of information as well where you can find better information. Once you have everything is set up, there is quite a few very cool dashboards that are very useful. Not only the map, which allows you to very quickly access the information about the farm, but all lines. The filter, one of the favorite by a lot of farmers, is to find me only ready to harvest lines, so I can just see, okay, well, line 12B, cool, very quickly can go and manage the farms, or I can just find only the ones that need assessment, cool, all of the lines that need an assessment, I can go and group them. So once you have all of the information set up, it makes it much easier to manage the farm. And as I mentioned, a lot of those information sound like a hassle to set up. We do have a lot of importers. If you have Excels, if you have some sort of format of your data of your farm, we can very quickly import them. And even for a very initial test of the Mussel app, you can just import it, send it to us, we'll import it for you, and it will save you time just to understand of how your data will look like in Mussel app. That's it for today, and as usual, if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, feel free to send us an email and we'll come back to you.